Welcome to A Slightly Better Life, the channel where we stop chasing perfection and start making life slightly better, one small change at a time. If you listened to my first two episodes, you know I'm a huge believer in something I call micro habits. That's where you make the entry point to a project or task that you're starting so ridiculously small that your brain has no reason to resist it. In my first episode, I shared how a 1 minute walk completely changed the way I approach to building habits. And in my second episode, I talked about the same concept of micro habits and how they actually helped me finally unpack my house after putting it off for 7 years. But both of those experiences taught me the same lesson. When you stop focusing on the big end goal and instead commit to the tiniest possible step, repeat it consistently, life-changing results can happen over time. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that micro habits really are not about getting more done. They're about reducing overwhelm. Because I found that most of the things we procrastinate on are not things we don't want to do. They're things that simply feel too big to start. So that's why I wanted to keep this conversation going. Today, I want to share a couple more examples of how micro habits have changed my life. And my hope is that by hearing some of these real life stories, you'll begin to see that no matter how overwhelming a task or project feels, there's always a first step that's small enough to take, even today. So, my house isn't particularly cluttered, but I definitely have things that I've outgrown. I have items that no longer bring me joy or fit the life I'm living today, or more importantly, they don't fit the life that I'm creating for the future me. And of course, I do have some of the usual clutter things like, too many glasses, too many coffee mugs, pots and pans, too many flower vases that I've collected over time. You get the gist. But every time I thought about spending a Saturday or Sunday going through all of it, it just felt exhausting, overwhelming, and honestly, who really wants to do that? So, what did I do? I did what probably most of you listening do. I procrastinated. And even though I knew logically in my brain that if I just started, I'd feel better, I still procrastinated. So, I asked myself the same question I've been asking since I implemented micro habits into my life. And that was, what's the absolute smallest step I could take today? So I work from home on Fridays, so I decided that every Friday after work, I would go around my house and I would find 5 things that required almost no decision making, and I'd either throw them away or put them in a charity box. And that was it. That's all I was going to do. So the first Friday, I found one chipped coffee mug, 3 drinking glasses that were originally a part of a set of 8, and one really ornate vase someone gave me one time with flowers that simply wasn't my style. And to be honest with you, I don't even know why I was still holding on to it. So I put the mug in the trash. I put the glasses and the vase into the donation box that I kept in the corner of my house. And that was it, task done. And it felt really good because I finally felt like I took some step toward that ultimate goal. I also created another micro habit. Instead of driving to the charity store every time I found a few things, I decided I'd wait until I filled several boxes because I knew me well enough to know that making multiple trips felt like I would use it as an excuse and I would avoid getting started. So I didn't want to do that. So I took that excuse off the table. And let me give you another example. In my kitchen, I have a really cute jar and it's full of pens and it sits right next to a pad that I use for like my grocery list. And I knew some of those pens no longer worked. I knew they were dried out. And I knew actually I didn't need that whole jar of pens. It looked really cluttered because there were just too many in the jar. So on one of the Fridays, I simply picked out 5 pens and threw them in the trash. That was it, just 5. And in 2 Fridays, I actually had cleaned the entire jar out. The jar looked cleaner. It looked more simplified. The counter looked cleaner because it wasn't overwhelmed by the pins. And that whole little section of my kitchen looked and felt a bit more peaceful. Now, after doing this for several months, I've reached the hardest part because the easy decisions and the easy items, well, they're almost gone. So now I'm looking at perfectly good items that no longer fit who I am, but they're just harder for me to let go of. But instead of quitting the habit because it's become more difficult, I simply adjusted it. And instead of choosing 5 items, I'm now choosing just 2. And that way it gives me a little more time to think through each decision on the item without losing the consistency of the micro habit I've been building over the last several months. Because I know me, if I stop, I'll have a hard time starting again. After doing this for several years now, actually, this micro habit program I've implemented, one of the biggest lessons I've learned from this process has nothing to do with decluttering or starting a walking program or anything like that. It has to do with mental energy. I realized that constantly thinking about something I needed to do or I wanted to start, but never actually doing it, was taking up far more mental and emotional energy than just spending the few minutes making a little progress toward that goal. That unfinished task was living rent free in my mind. And every time I walked past it or thought about it, my brain reminded me. Every reminder created just a little more stress and anxiety. But once I started taking even the smallest step, whether it was 1 minute walking in my backyard, or whether it was taking 5 items on a Friday and deciding to throw them away or put them in a charity box, I noticed something interesting. My anxiety started to decrease. And I think it's because my brain finally knew we're handling this. That's the power of micro habits. Yes, they help you accomplish goals, but more importantly, they quiet the mental noise. They reduce overwhelm. They free up the energy you've been spending worrying about the task instead of working on it. Micro habits are not just about getting things done. They're about creating peace of mind. So, if there's one thing I hope you take away from today's episode, it's this. Don't focus on how big the project is. Focus on the smallest step you can take today and make it so small, you guys, that it almost feels silly. Because when you make the first step small enough, you stop waiting for motivation, you stop feeling overwhelmed, and you simply begin. And that's often all it takes to start changing your life. So, what I'd love for you guys to do is leave me a comment and tell me what's one of the micro habits you're going to start this week or even this month. And what's the one project you've been putting off that you're going to start using the micro habit method? I can't wait to hear from you, and I can't wait to hear what you guys tell me you're going to start to do. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future episodes. I'll continue sharing simple ideas that have made my life just a little better, and hopefully they'll make your life slightly better too. And remember, you don't need a perfect life, just a slightly better one. I know there are thousands of channels and podcasts out there you can listen to, so thank you so much for choosing mine today, and I truly hope you come back. Now, let's all take a deep breath. Let's inhale and exhale. And if no one's told you this lately, you matter and you are worthy. Until next time.